this coming tour of Japan, does this mean that there is a new record on the way?
Actually, no. I'm just going over to play for people because I like to play.
Mm-hmm. How did it come about?
Let's see, how did this come about? I don't know. Somebody called my agent up and asked for me.
It's easy as that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, does this happen frequently where you're getting contacted by various countries around the world and you sort of up and visit them?
Yeah, actually, that's the case.
Oh, is that right?
Uh-huh.
Whereabouts do you usually go?
Well, I played in Australia, New Zealand, and all of Europe, and you know, it's basically more where I didn't go. I haven't been to Russia.
You haven't been, or have?
I have not been to Russia,
okay.
No. Or China.
Mm-hmm. I guess one reason you asked this is because your last release was hyped quite a bit. It seems like there were a lot of high-profile guests on it and whatnot. Did that account for a lot more offers from abroad or even in the United States?
The success of Back from Rio did prompt a number of engagements around the world.
Uh-huh.
That's true. The album was in the top 10 in Scandinavia,
mm-hmm.
and I did quite a bit of work over there last summer.
Mm-hmm.
And it did well. It did well everywhere, actually. So, yeah, of course, it does help when you have a good album out and people want to see what you're doing.
For that particular album, though, it seemed like there was quite a bit of ballyhoo over it because it was almost as if they pretended like you had been gone and you came back, whereas that wasn't the case at all.
No, that wasn't the case. Actually, the title Back from Rio was a joke,
mm-hmm.
because a lot of people thought that back in the 60s, when I changed my name from Jim to Roger,
mm-hmm.
that Jim had gone to Rio. So this was a joke about that. That was the whole reason I decided to call the album Back from Rio.
Uh-huh. What accounted for that sort of tidal wave of publicity it received, though? I mean, was that was that renewed interest on the part of the record company, or what exactly went down?
Well, I was with a new record company at that time, and it's just the normal thing that they do when there's a record out.
Mm-hmm.
It was nothing unusual, really.
Mm-hmm. The fellow who put together these questions here thought, well, not necessarily in the case of Back from Rio, but there seemed to be a lot of wannabe Byrds bands out, in the last several years, and maybe people are starting to look to you, for guidance or for direction.
Well, there was a, sort of a flurry of bands that had been influenced by the Byrds toward the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I guess REM would be the most well-known of them. And that was a real compliment because it was amazing that people would go back so many years to emulate that style.
Mm-hmm. I guess more blatantly, and very few people remember this, but when Tom Petty first came out, the comparisons were overwhelming.
Well, Tom's a good friend of mine, and I really appreciate the way he interprets my older stuff, and like Feel a Whole Lot Better and things like that.
Mm-hmm. It's as if he just sort of took the baton from you and kept on going.
Right.
And it remains actually a cornerstone of his style now, I suppose.
Well, Tom has got his own style. He was influenced by a lot of people, and I'm proud to be one of them.
Mm-hmm. And how about some of the other bands you've noticed that have picked up on the Byrds thing? Do you have anything to say about any of those?
Well, I like them very much. Well, REM, had the Byrds influence when they started out, and now they've gone off into their own kind of area. See, that's the normal transition where people are influenced by an artist. Like in my case, I was influenced by Elvis Presley, and then I got into folk music, and I was influenced by Pete Seeger. And you'll see elements of those artists in what I did later, but I developed my own style after that. And that's what they've done. They've listened to the stuff we did back as the Byrds and developed their own styles later.
So you don't have any critical sort of outlook on what they're doing, the younger bands?
Not at all. I think it's a perfectly acceptable thing and actually a desirable thing,
mm-hmm.
that people would learn from something and then go on and create something new.
There's a question here about the 60s. Do you think the 60s were something special? I mean, is there something that sets apart the 60s from the ensuing decades?
The 60s were really a decade of artistic renaissance and experimentation, exploration. A lot of groundbreaking took place that hasn't taken place since then. I see this sort of thing as a cycle. It happens every 30 or 40 years that people will do this groundbreaking and experimentation, and then they'll back off and kind of play it safe for a while. And then they'll get tired of playing it safe, and they'll go and do something adventurous again.
I guess one fact that supports your theory is the fact that people who came of age in the 60s still kind of listen to the music from that era as opposed to adopting newer stuff.
Well, I'm fascinated by that because this is one of the first generations to come along that did really get into the stuff that their previous generation had been into. I remember when I grew up around in the 50s, people would never think of listening back to the music of the 30s. You know, it was gone. It was not, it was totally out of fashion. So it's an interesting phenomenon that people now are looking back to the music of the 60s.
You were on a TV program over here called Guitars. Do you recall that at all? I'm not quite sure what exactly you did on this program.
Well, they came over here to Orlando, Florida, and they taped it. And they just asked me questions about various guitars, like my Rickenbacker 12-string that I play. And I showed them a version that lights up when you play it. And I think I showed them a Takamine acoustic 12-string that I have. That was all. We just talked about guitars.
Are you known as an avid guitar collector or something?
No, I'm not. Unlike a lot of my friends, I don't have a big guitar collection. I just have a few guitars that I play, and that's all.
Next question here asks about your solo career. It seems like maybe compared against some of the other guys who went solo, that is guys who started out in well-known 60s bands, you've kept kind of a low profile.
Well, that hasn't been intentional, but I've been just doing it. I enjoy doing it, and for whatever it happens, it's okay with me if it goes up or down. It's just a good way to make a living, and I enjoy doing it.
What comprises the bulk of your musical activities?
Well, I write songs. I write new songs. I go out and do a lot of concerts, which vary from year to year. Sometimes I'll do 150, and sometimes I'll do maybe 60 or 70 concerts in a year. And when I do perform, I do a variety of songs from different eras, from my latest unrecorded material to material that I did on Back from Rio, and material I did maybe with McGuinn, Clark, and Hillman, and earlier material from the Byrds, and maybe some material from before the Byrds. I'll just do a variety of things.
Do you tailor your shows to your audiences, or do you have like a set show you happen to be doing during a certain period, and do you stay with the same format for a period of time?
Yeah, I usually do. I work out a set basically because when you're working with a band, you have to have a certain amount of material that everybody is familiar with. When I'm working acoustic solo, I vary the set more, and I'm able to just have more freedom where I just pull one out of the hat.
So you do solo shows, huh?
Yeah, basically I do a lot of solo shows. I was inspired by Pete Seeger back when I was a kid, and I was just amazed at how he could get up there by himself and command maybe 5,000 or 10,000 people. Because I'd only seen him work with the Weavers, which was his group before he went off solo, and I was a little disappointed when he left the Weavers. But when I went to see him solo, I understood why he had done that, and I couldn't believe that one guy could get up there and just take over the place.